Okay, so today we begin a special series that we're going to continue this week, and Be'ezer Hashem, the beginning of the next week. And as you see, this is the Maamar, Basi, Legani, Tovshin Chav Gimel. In these contrasim, it's on page Yud. If you go to page Yud, before that there's a few introductions, but page Yud, that's where it begins. See on the top it says Yud Shvat, Tovshin Chav Gimel, which is 5723 or 1963. Okay, this series of shiurim is dedicated by our dear friends Reb Shimshon and Rivki Vershansky in loving memory of her father and his father-in-law Reb Zalman Yudah ben Reb Shalom Yeshayo Deitch Zechrayna Levracha Tehei Nafshay Nishmasi Tzura B'Tzrar HaChayim. It should continue to be an eternal source of light and blessing and inspiration to his family and loved ones and all of us and all the Jewish people. I also want to wish happy birthday. Oh, you're here. Gewaldig to Tzvi Aryeh ben Rivka. Mazel tov, happy birthday. Those who behave will get a nice piece of birthday cake after the class. And thank you very much. In honor of the 69th birthday. Arichas Yom B'Shalom Tov is getting younger and smarter every year. This Maamar begins with a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. I'm just going to give a few moments of history so you understand the context of it. Rabbi Zaks was very marveling on the words Basi Legani, like what? What's up is Basi Legani? So I'll just give a little background here. The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, he passed away in 1950. Tovshin Yud Shvat, that's his yahrzeit. In his last years, he was physically very ill. So it was hard for him to say Maamarim. The Chabad Rebbe's always said Maamarim of Chassidus, like in the tradition of all the way from the Alter Rebbe, and the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. So instead of saying for every Yom Tov or special days, he would publish a Maamar that he said in earlier years, and he wrote, and he would edit it and add some summations. These were contrasim, like pamphlets that were given out, whether it was for Chanukah, for Purim, for Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, Yotes Kislev, whatever it was. Yud Shvat was the yahrzeit of his grandmother. Her name was Rebbe Rivka, because Zayda, the Rebbe Manash's wife, and Yud Gimel Shvat is the yahrzeit of his own mother, Rebbe Tzin Sarah. So for the year Tovshin Yud, 1950, he gave out a Maamar with 20 chapters. 20 chapters, a very long Maamar. The Maamar began with the pasuk Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. The first 5 chapters he gave out for Yud Shvat, the yahrzeit of his grandmother, which was Shabbos Boy that year, Shabbos Parshas Boy. Another 5 chapters to learn for the yahrzeit of his mother, Yud Gimel Shvat. Another 5 chapters for Purim. And the last 5 chapters for Beis Nissen, which is the yahrzeit of his father, the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe. So that Friday or that week, he sent the Maamar for publication, and it was published right before Shabbos for people to learn on that Shabbos. That Shabbos morning, he returned his soul to its maker. Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud Shabbos Boy, 10 to 8 in the morning, in 770 he passed away on the 2nd floor. He came over from the other side of the ocean. He escaped the Nazis in 1940, Warsaw. But he lived in New York in the last 10 years in Brooklyn. And he passed away Shabbos morning. So it happened to be that for the very day that he passed away, he gave out a Maamar to learn. Mamish for a day before, he gave out a Maamar to learn on that day. That began with the pasuk, Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. Basi Legani Achaisi Kala is a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. The beginning of chapter 5, those who say Shir Hashirim, you know the beginning of Perek Hey, is Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. Hashem says, I came to my garden, Legani, to be with my sister, my Kala, my bride. And according to Chazal, it's a metaphor for the day that Moshe Rabbeinu put up the Mishkan. And Hashem said, I finally came back to my garden. Basi, Legani, Kala. But it's really a perspective that this world is called God's garden. Basi, Legani, it's a garden. And don't take that for granted. Because when you look at the world, it's very easy to define it as a jungle rather than a garden. Even if you don't want to define it as a jungle, you could define it as a factory. You could define it as an office. You could define it as a subway station. There's a lot of different ways, a roller coaster, a Ferris wheel. But here the definition is Basi Legani. It's a garden, which is a place of beauty and pleasure and wonderful fragrance, and a place where people go to relax and enjoy life. Tranquil, yes, tranquil. Yeah. But the tranquility of this garden is not a regular type of tranquility, as we know. There's a reason people call the world a jungle. It's a different type of tranquility. So tranquility has to be worked through. It has to be cultivated. A garden has to be cultivated. If a garden is not cultivated, all types of weeds and wild plants and bacterias and germs, it could become a wild place, yes. So this was the Maamar that came out for Yud Shvat, which was the yahrzeit of his Baba, but it turned out that this was his own Yom Estalkus of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz. So his son-in-law, who later became the Lubavitcher Rebbe, then he was known as the Ramash, he published the rest of the Maamarim over the next few weeks, even though his father-in-law passed away, but this is what he gave out to be learned. And this became what's known as the Hemshech. In Chabad Chassidus, there's something called a Hemshech. Hemshech means a series. Sometimes you have a Maamar itself contained. A Hemshech means it continues. For example, the Rebbe Rashab has a Hemshech called Tafresh Ayin Beis, 1912, which he continued for 4 years. He has a Hemshech Tafresh Samach Vav, 1906, 1905, which he continued for a few years. So this is Hemshechim. This is a Hemshech. It didn't continue for a few years, but it has a few Maamarim, 20 chapters. The next year was Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph, 1951. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, was struggling a whole year because he didn't want to accept the leadership of Lubavitch. And it was very difficult. The Rebbe didn't have sons. He only had 3 daughters. One of them was murdered in Treblinka, Shena. The older one was married to a man named Rashag Reb Shmaryo Gurari, and the middle one, Rebbe Tzachai Mushka, was married to the Rebbe. But a year later, at the Fabrengen, Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph, was the first anniversary of his father-in-law's passing. At the Fabrengen, the Rebbe finally accepted officially the leadership of Chabad. How did it express itself? In saying a Maamar. Saying a Maamar with the niggin, the melody of a Maamar. So which Maamar did he say? He started off with a voice choked in tears. They have it on a tape. It was taped. That in the Maamar that the Rebbe, my father-in-law, gave out last year for the yahrzeit, for his Yom Estalkus, he started off Basi, Legani, Kala, which is the traditional melody which the Chabad Rebbes would say Maamarim. Basi, Legani, Kala, Shtete, Medrash, Legani, Lignuni. That was the niggin already from the Alter Rebbe, from the Balatanya. And he said to the Maamar, it was a very, very intense Maamar. It took a long time. He took a few breaks in the middle. They sang Nigunim in the middle of all the Rabbeim. He cried profusely. But the main focus was chapter 1. He explained chapter 1 of the Maamar. The next year was Tavshin Yud Beis, 1952. So he said the Maamar again, but he focused on chapter 2. And then each year became a tradition that he really took apart and he dissected the chapter connected to that year. So Tavshin Yud Gimel, 1953, was chapter 3. Tavshin Chav Gimel, 1963, was chapter 13. Yud Gimel, because it starts from Tavshin Yud Aleph, 1951. And then in 1970, Tavshin Lamed, he finished, because it was 20 years. I remember the Maamar is 20 chapters. Tavshin Lamed Aleph, 1971, he started over again. He started over again. And again, each year, he would say the Maamar at the Fabrengen. It was a long Maamar. And he would show the full depth of what his father-in-law, the Rebbe, was explaining in that particular chapter. He would sum up till that chapter in the beginning, and then he would focus on that Perek. And the end of that was another 20 years later. It started in 1970, so that finished Tafshin Nun, 1990. That was the second series that ended. The Rebbe stopped saying Maamarim in 1988, so he did till chapter 18 the second time, and then that was it. So he didn't ever finish the second series. So 1991 started the learning it the third time, and that finished 20 years later. So it happens to be that this year is Tafshin Pei Gimel, right? 2023. So it's Perek Yud Gimel, because 1990 started this series. 1991 started a third time, and that ended 2010. So now is the fourth time. So this year, Tafshin Pei Gimel is chapter Yud Gimel. So they published the Maamar that Rebbe said, Tafshin Chav Gimel, which is 1963, and Tafshin Mem Gimel, which is 1983, because those were the two times that he focused on chapter 13 of the Maamar. That's the context of this Maamar. So it's one Maamar that the Rebbe said at the Fabrengen in Yud Shvat. It's a very, very deep Maamar. It's a very special Maamar. It's not so easy. It's a hard Maamar. We'll explain it based on Hashem. So that's where they have the two, Tafshin Chav Gimel and Tafshin Mem Gimel. That's the background. And it's like most Maamarim, it starts with a pasuk, Basi, Legani, Kala. Yeah, it's one Maamar that just has 20 chapters. No, it's like in Likkutei Torah, there's a paragraph, when you say a chapter, it's all from one Maamar. It's a continuation, yeah. The whole series starts off with Basi Legani, and then it's 20 chapters after that. Yeah.
Does it have his father-in-laws also?
Yes, so in the beginning of this Kuntras, if you'll see page Zion, they printed chapter 13 of his father-in-law, because it's based on that. The whole Maamar, the whole 20 chapters is printed in his father-in-law's Svarim, Sefer Maamarim Tafshin Yud, it's called, Maamarim of 1950. But here they put in Yud Gimel because it's the basis of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's whole Maamar. So Be'ezer Hashem will go through the Maamar. I hope we'll finish. We'll learn this week, today, and tomorrow, Tuesday, Thursday, and then the beginning of next week. So he starts off, Basi Legani Achaisi Kala. It's clear? If I state, okay. There's a famous expression in Gemara, in Medrash, Ba'med Sayim Hai Pasach Hai. What one finishes, the next one begins. So he did his. Did everybody else finish Basi Legani? So he began with Basi Legani. Basi Legani Achaisi Kala Umevi Kvoit Kedushas Moiri V'Chami Admur. This is obviously an acronym for my father-in-law, Baal HaYilula, the yahrzeit. Baal HaYilula means the one whose yahrzeit is on Yud Shvat. He brings Mashakasav b'Medrash, b'Firush Basi Legani. There's a Medrash known as Medrash Rabbi Shir Hashirim, and on this pasuk Basi Legani, the Medrash says, what does it mean? I came to my garden. Why are you calling it my garden? He says Legani Lignuni. Gnuni was a pavilion that they would build for a chassan and a kala. The Gemara says in Sukkah and other places that brides and grooms, they would get married and they would hang out in a special hut, a special tent, a special pavilion that was built for them, where they were there for 7 days or maybe even longer, and that's where all the friends would come and the neighbors would come, and they would have meals and sheva brachas, and they would celebrate with them. This was called gnuni. So the Medrash says Legani here means Legani Lignuni, to my place of tranquility. It was like a very exciting place where the groom and the bride were. L'makam shahaya ikri betchila. To the place, Hashem says, where my essence was always there. In the beginning, the place where I was there. The ikr shchina betachtoinam haisa. This is what the Medrash says. Because the primary residence of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence, where was it? It was betachtoinim. It was in this physical lower world. So I came back to the place where I used to, so to speak, hang out. I used to be here. I came back. It's not a new entrance. It's the Gani, it's mine. This is my place. So what happened? But the Medrash says, there began the situations and the experiences where the human being missed the mark and didn't understand the truth about his or her alignment with the divine. The word chet, as we said many times, is translated as sin. But as the Balatanya says many times, the real translation of the word chet means missing the target. Like it says by Shaul HaMelech, Koileya el asayra v'lo yechta. When he shot his arrows, right? He never missed. Lo yechta. Basheva says in Malachim, V'hayu aniyu b'ni shloimeh chatoyim. Chatoyim means we're going to be missing. Because basically you missed the target. Like you're shooting, but you're shooting in the wrong direction. So through the various chatoyim, which created a lack of alignment, Heichel me Adam Arishin from Adam. Through the 7 generations, you had what happened with Adam, and then you had Cain's murder of Hevel, and you had Enosh, and you had the Mabul, and you had the Deira Flug, and you had Zdoim, all these things. Silku es hashchinim el mata l'mayla. They, so to speak, removed the divine presence from Lamata, from this world Lamaila. And it says within Medrash, there's 7 heavens. Aleph Ches Dalet, Ches is 7 heavens and earth. That's 8. So he says, with each one he went up, he ascended to a higher heaven. Metaphorically speaking, the Shekhinah became more and more removed from the consciousness of reality, of our reality. Something could be removed 1 level, and then removed 2 levels, and 3 levels, and then it's just beyond. That's what it means. When you say removed, doesn't mean physically removed, but it means in consciousness and experience, it was not anymore just like a person can have something inside of them, but it's removed from you. You're disassociated from it. You're disconnected. Then the Medrash continues. There came 7 generations, and they started to bring down the Shekhinah. It's a very interesting Medrash. There were 7 sins that expelled the Shekhinah, and then there were 7 generations that brought down the Shekhinah. Avram Avinu was the first. He brought it down from heaven number 7 to heaven number 6. And then you had Yitzchak, and then you had Yaakov, and you had Levi, you had Kahos, you had Amram. So Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahos, Amram, and then Moshe. Moshe was the 7th. So he says, Avram began the process of healing the world. What does it mean, healing the world? Redeeming the world. That's the Basi Legani, coming back down. What does it mean literally coming back down? It means creating a reality, inviting people to realize that they don't have to live a fragmented life, a depressing life, a life that's divorced from oneness. Ad Moshe. Shehu Hashvi. Moshe is number 7. V'chol Hashvi in Chavivin. As the Medrash says, all number 7s in Judaism are cherished. They have a special love. There's a special chavivus. Like Shabbos is number 7, and Shemitah is number 7, and Yovel comes after 7 times 7. Sfiras Haimer is 7 times 7. There's a special Shabbos, there's a special love for 7. That was Moshe. He brought down the Shekhinah from heaven number 1, finally to the earth. Not in heaven anymore, or not only in heaven, I should say, earth. In other words, making it tangible, making it real. That's why it was Moshe who gives the mitzvah, make a mikdash, build a mishkan, a sanctuary, and I will dwell, Hashem says, among them. What's b'shachanti b'soicham? I want to dwell among you. I want to be inside you. I want to be with you. And this reality is created through the avodah, through the work of the Jewish people. Like the Mefarshim say, the Alshich says, others say, it says b'soicham, not b'soichai. It should have said I will dwell in it, not I will dwell in them. There weren't 20 houses, there was 1 house. So the Mefarshim say mikdash, but v'shachanti b'soicham. It's not a house I want to dwell in, a physical building alone. I want to dwell inside of you, in your soul, in your heart, in your psyche, in your consciousness. Each person does this avoid of bringing the Shekhinah into his or her reality. But this began and was completed on that level, on that generation through Moshe. Moshe is number 7, And that's why Basi, Legani, Achaisi Kala was said about that time. Hashem says, I came back to where my essence was before I was expelled in the beginning of creation. When I created the world, this was the place. And then, they sent me away, and now Basi, I returned. He explains the general work of Asil Mikdash is talking about literally the building of the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the tabernacle. Shalzen Nemer, and on this the pasuk says in Truma, we'll learn in a few weeks, you should build the beams for the Mishkan, which are made from Atzei Shittim. Atzei Shittim are acacia wood or cedar wood, usually acacia wood, standing. They had beams made of wood, lumber. What type of wood? Atzei Shittim. And those beams stood and held up. This was the structure of the Mishkan. It was made from these beams. It was gold-plated. And this was the exterior structure of the Mishkan. Crushim. And my father-in-law explains at length in the Hemshech. Hemshech, again, is this series of Maamarim. She'ikir avoid he lasses mishtus shittim de lu'umaza shtus da'olam she'yeh shtus de kedusha. The word is atzei shittim. Shittim literally means atzei shittim acacia wood, but the word shittim comes from the word shtus. Shtus means insanity, like a ruach shtus. So he says because the avoid is to take the shtus, the lu'umaza, the insanity of life, and transform that into a Mishkan. You don't build a Mishkan from heavenly material. That's not where you build it from. You build the Mishkan from the Atzei Shittim, from the Shtus de Lu'umaza. You build it from the stuff of this world. That's the Chiddush of the Mishkan.
Shittim and Shtus the same.
Yeah, Shita. The word Shita is like Miloshin Hataya, Netiyah. There's following the middle path, and then when you gravitate to one side or another side, it's called, like in Parshas Nosei, kisista ishta with soita, kisista, right? Astray. You go astray. Yeah, that's the diktuk of it. That's what Gemara says in soita. Amar ish lakish ein adam over avedel kein nichnas by ruach shtus kisista. Right. The Gemara says in Maseches Ksuvos that you gedenkt by Yehuda vayet ad isha adulami u'shmai chira vayet. Yeah. He went astray. He went away. Yeah. The Gemara says over there about Shmuel Bar Yitzchak used to dance by chasanas. He would juggle hadassim, merakad atlas. So the Bzeda told him, "You're embarrassing all of us." Kamichsif lon sava, because covered Torah, he would dance by his levaya. There was ifsik amudah denura. There was a pillar of fire that separated the coffin, the aron, the mitzvah from everybody else. So the Bzeda said, Ahani le shtusei l'sava. It was the shtus, it was his insanity that helped him. The shtus, there's three lashonos over there, shtus, shutise, shitase, but one of them is shtusei, the shtus. So that's shtus in a positive sense. He was dancing at a wedding, he was uninhibited. So he said, Sapasnisht. You have to be calculated. But the Levi, he said, Ahani le shtusei l'sava. That's an example of transforming shtus. So he says, you don't build a Mishkan from heavenly things. That's not where you build it from. You build it from the same energy that's creating the shtus de l'u'umaza. That's the energy from which you build the Mishkan. And this is a very fundamental idea, as we'll see. That's why you can only do it on earth. Because in heaven you don't have shtus. You need insanity. For this you need insanity. Kosher insanity. The same mishagas, call it mishagas, that's fueling the lu'umaza, the unholiness from that mishkan atzei shittim. That's what creates the mishkan. V'zeu gaminyin hakrashim, keresh oisius sheker. And that becomes krashim. The word krashim is keresh, is kuf reishin. So when you reconfigure it, it's the same letters like sheker, which is a lie. Hainu shemishekera oilam yamidu binyan sheyeh mikdash mishkan lo yizbarach. Here again, the beams, the krashim of the mishkan, you're making from the sheker, from the falsehood of the world. From that you build up a structure which becomes the dwelling place for Hashem. It's not you're ignoring the lie, you're running away from the lie, you're disregarding the lie. There's an inyan in that too. But the real depth of Basi Legani Achaisi Kala is you take, that's how you fix those first seven things, because you take that very energy and you reveal that essentially the sheker really wants to be a keresh, it wants to be a beam, which is also the word kesher, by the way, connection. It's really looking for a connection. Sheker, kesher, keresh, it's all the same words. So when you realize it's really looking for a connection, you could take the lie and turn it into a pillar. In the avoid of every person, it means we cultivate a kiruv. A kiruv means a relationship, a closeness with godliness. The godliness in us and in the world. And that's why the main avoid in the Mishkan was karbanas. Rabbeinu Bechaya writes, the word carbon comes from the word we usually translate carbon as sacrifice. So it's not true. That's not the translation. The word carbon comes from the word kiruv, closeness, very different than sacrifice. Sacrifice sounds like you're sacrificing yourself in order to serve someone else. Kiruv means you're bringing yourself closer. You're not sacrificing yourself. You're actually you're actualizing yourself. You're sublimating yourself. Yes, sometimes I have to sacrifice something that's superficial or alien. That's true. I have to sacrifice an addiction. I have to sacrifice a shtus. I have to sacrifice a lie. But essentially, understand, carbon is not sacrifice. Carbon is kiruv. It's closeness. Was trachst du? Huh? It's a relationship, exactly. It says, truma. Right? So that everybody, yes, you're not taking a contribution, you're giving. V'nosnuli truma. You don't take money. That's not what he's asking. He's not asking everybody to take. He's asking people to give. No. When you're giving for the Mishkan, you're taking, because you're talking about infinity. So it's not, what does it mean you're giving to infinity? When you're giving, you're aligning yourself, you're connecting yourself to your ultimate self. So that's why it's an inyan of kiruv. It says in Zohar that the carbon goes up to the secret of Ein Sof. And this creates reciprocity from above, a flow from above. The relationship is in both directions. As Chazal say, by a carbon it says, Reyach nichoyach, there's a pleasure for me that I said and my will was done. And that experience of the Nachas Ruach, that's the flow from above. My father-in-law, the Baal HaYilula, explains further in the Hamshich, in order to transform the lie of the world and the insanity of the world, that this should become a mikdash, a mishkan, v'shechanti b'seichem, that Hashem dwells where? In the shtus, in the sheker. How do you do that? This is the battle that the Jewish people are conducting from the day they became a people, and that's why with the day they leave Egypt, they're called Tzivos Hashem, which means the soldiers of the Rebbeinu Shalom. In this week's parsha, Parsha's boy, Tzivos Hashem, he be'etzem yoyim hazeh yatzu kol Tzivos Hashem eretz Mitzrayim. Why are we called soldiers? The answer is because the entire work of the Jewish people is a daily battle for transcendence, a daily battle for oneness, a daily battle for revealing the truth. That's Tzivos Hashem. And he explains in the Maamar, if you see the Rebbe here is summarizing the first 12 chapters of the Basi Legani, because in the second chapter here he's going to begin focusing on Sif Yud Gimel, because that's the focus of this year. So he summarizes very briefly. It's interesting every year how he summarized it. Every year he summarized it a little differently, because he would emphasize those points that are relevant to the point of the year. So the summation every year is a little different because you emphasize different points. So everything that he's saying in the summation becomes important later. So he says that the word Sava, the Rebbe Ayatz, and the word Sava in Hebrew has three meanings. Shekulam yeshnam ba'avodas adam lamali shlichus HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamai. All exist in the work of a person to fulfill Hashem's mission in his world. Tzava basically means a soldier. You're in the army, right? Like tzava, you're in the army. Tzivus Hashem. Tzava also means time, a fixed time in Tanakh. Halay tzava le'enosh, there's a fixed time, and tzava also comes from the word sivyon, which means beauty and synthesis and integration. So all three things exist in Avodah. Number one, you're in an army. You're mobilized. You have a mission. And you're indispensable. Number two, everyone has a fixed time and place. How they fulfill that mission. Your journey is not my journey. And number two, everyone does it in a different way. There's diversity. Beauty comes from the fact that there's different colors. No two people have the same mission. Those are the three things in Tzava important. No two soldiers have the same mission. This soldier goes here, this soldier has a different mission. So everyone has a fixed time and place, and everyone has a unique element in that mission. And then he continues and explains and elaborates. During the war, we see you see in the physical world that what a leader does to win a war transcends all calculations of peacetime. You have it, unfortunately, in shtus, right? You could look at Russia, at Vladimir Putin. You could study Napoleon, who decided to invade Russia. And you could study others. To win a war, they do anything. So he gives a very interesting mashal. During the time of war, the king squanders, mevazbez, all of his treasures. And not just money, but treasures that usually he would not only not squander, he wouldn't even show them. Kings had, like in Petersburg, you have the Hermitage. They would have these museums, these galleries, these treasure safes, where they had treasures of generations, right? Like in England, they have what's called the crown jewels. Some of them are 1,000 to 1,100 years old. They're not insured. You know why? Because they're priceless. What are you going to charge for insurance? They're literally priceless. You're not going to charge. They're not insured. So these are oitziris that kings would have that it wouldn't even show them. Not just from his generation. Things that his fathers and fathers' fathers gathered from generations. And yet, when it comes to war, he's ready to splurge it all. That's how deep Nitzachon is. That's how deep Midas and Nitzachon, Midah victory. And then he adds, and sometimes the king is ready to put himself in danger, which is more than everything else. He's ready to put himself on the line. Why? To win the war. I just go home, you have a house, go home. No. To be Menatzech, the Melchama, he's ready to put himself on the line. In other words, that his life is in danger. This line is going to be the key, one of the major points in this Maamar. This is all a metaphor. That there's a war, Tzivus Hashem. And for this victory, Hashem gives an oitzer, a treasure that usually is not seen by anybody. But not only that, he's ready to put himself on the line. In other words, not just to endanger all the treasures, but to endanger his very self, his very essence. So to speak, the king is ready to die. Is ready to give his life so that he should win the war. Because he knows to win the war, he has to put himself out on line and become so vulnerable to the point that he could lose everything. Because if he's dead, there's nobody to win a war. Right? He's gone. He's finished. The enemy wins. That's how vulnerable he becomes. And we're going to see here what this means. That it's a fascinating, it's a very daring idea of this Maamar. The level of vulnerability Kivayachal that Hashem engages in, to the point where his very existence becomes in danger. But that's the only way you could really win and transform the world. We're going to see what that theme is. He's going to explain. I'm just saying this is it.
It's too early to ask what he's putting on the line
He's putting on the line everything. Everything. That's the point. That there comes a point you hold nothing back. There's points you hold back, which means you're still calculated. And then there's a point, here's my heart, here you have everything. But this line that the melech is ma'imid atzmai b'sakana. It's not just the treasures. It's the most vulnerable experience. Why? Because it's necessary for the nitzachon, for the victory. In order to receive it, this treasure, you need to be a keli. You have to be able to open yourself up. Every gift in the world, you have to be able to open yourself up to it. You need to be a keli. It could rain a whole day. If you didn't plow the earth and you didn't plant any seeds, nothing is growing. It's called a keli. Right? We all know people could give us the most amazing advice in the world. If you're not worked out, it's worthless. Why? Because you could rain and rain and rain and rain. I have to be a keli. I have to be open. I have to have a vessel. So Hashem could give the treasures, but He says you need a keli. So the person has to be able to find in their avodah the parallel to this treasure. And he explains, who does the king give the treasures to? He gives it to the commanders, the pkidei hachayil, the generals, the big guys. But who is it for? It's for the foot soldiers. In other words, the generals, it's not for them. It's not for them to put in their house. It's to give it to the people, boots on the ground, that are out there. And this is very important idea. Because ultimately, it's not like there's a hierarchy. The generals, they have access to the secrets. Right? No. The Melech may give it through them. But for whom? For the people that are out in the trenches. Because they're the ones doing the work. They shouldn't think that they're giving it because of themselves. That's the worst mistake, when people of stature, of talent, you think, I'm so good, the king shared with me the treasure. He didn't share with you. You're a conduit. If you're a conduit, good. If not, leave. I was once sitting, I had a meal once with a very, very wealthy Jew, extremely wealthy Jew. He's also a very big Baal tzedakah. So I asked him how he works with tzedakah, who he decides to give to, he decides not to give to. So he told me that in the beginning, he would start thinking, this one, yeah, this one not, this one, yeah, this one not. And then he realized that, he said, imagine, he says, I have a gabbai tzedakah, somebody who works for me. Yeah. And his job is to give me a list of everyone who asks, and I tell them how much to give. Now imagine if I find out that he's the one making all the decisions. The first thing I'll do is I'll get rid of him. So he says, I realize that that's with me and Hashem. I'm just the gabbai tzedakah. I'm going to make decisions, this one, yeah, this one, not. Who asked you? Here's the money, you're just a messenger. So that's the nekuda. From this too we understand that the treasure needs to be in every person. Every person has to find it, because everyone is tzivus Hashem, not just the generals. It's not there's some Jews who are in and some Jews who are out. That's not the case. So if every Jew is a tzivus Hashem, it means the treasure is given to each one of them. So each one has to be able to find it. He starts explaining in the Maamar Basi Legani, the Rebbe Rayatz. What is this oitzer? We're speaking about the treasure that the king squanders and splurges during a time of combat. What is this? Based on what it says in Tikkunei Zoyar. Tikkunei Zoyar is a section of Zoyar that focuses on the explanation of the word Bereshis. 70 interpretations of the word Bereshis. Because the word Bereshis could be written in many different ways. So there's a section of Zohar called Tikkunei Zohar. So over there's an expression in Tikkunei Zohar, Tikkun Nun Zayin, Oirein Soif Lamaila Adin Ketz or Lamata Adin Tachlis. The light of the Ein Soif The light of infinity, or the light which is infinite, extends upwards infinitely and downwards to no end. The Maamar Shabbos that we learned, Ve'era, from the Alter Rebbe in Torah Ohr, has this expression, and he explains it over there at length. What does this mean? It's a very fascinating expression. Ohr Ein Sof. The light is infinite. Ohr Ein Sof. The light of Hashem. The expression of Hashem. No, he could have just said Ohr Ein Sof. The light is infinite. No, if it's infinite, it goes up and it goes down. He doesn't do that. He says Ohr Ein Sof. L'mayla adin ketz u'lamata adin tachlis. He's defining something about this Ohr. That it goes up endlessly, infinitely. Ad ein ketz means there's no end. U'lamata adin tachlis. The ultimate treasure is this Ohr Ein Sof, this light of Ein Sof, which is L'mayla ad ein ketz. It's infinite. That's the ultimate oitzer, and that's what he's giving to the soldiers. You see in order to appreciate what L'mayla adin ketz is, first you have to understand what Lamata adin tachlis is, because that is lower than L'mayla adin ketz, and from there you appreciate it. And he begins explaining what's the idea of Ohr Ein Sof Lamata adin tachlis, the way it's expressed in the creation of the worlds, which is basically the theme of the previous chapter, which was Perek Yud Beis of the Rebbe Rayatz's Maamar of Basi Legani. What's the point over there? When it says in Zohar, Ohr Ein Sof L'mayla adin ketz Lamata adin tachlis, what is this? What are we talking about? Why does the Zohar say this? What's the point? What's the relevance? How does this help anybody? The word Ohr is light. The word Ohr is light. What's the definition of light? Definition of light, this was the main theme of last year's Maamar. Those who remember, we learned Basi Legani Tavshin Chav Beis. It was all about what Ohr is, what light is. Especially today we know what light, we don't know what light is, but we know a little more about what light is. The definition of light is the transmission of energy from one object towards another. Everything emits Ohr, everything emits light. Light is basically the way one object or a person or anything that exists, it emits light, and that's how it, so to speak, is communicated to somebody else. I see your light, you see my light. Everything gives out light. And of course, based on the electromagnetic fields of that light, or based on the frequency of the light, the speed of the light, and the various properties of the light, that's what I could see, what I can't see. But everything in the world emits Ohr, emits light. Pashut physically we're talking about. What does this represent spiritually? Ohr is the way that one thing is experienced and seen by another. You have who you are, and you have the way you're seen, the way you're transported into another world. The way I see you, the way I perceive you. That's what the concept of Ohr is. So Ohr is the ability for a relationship, for connection. Without Ohr, if there was no concept of light, you are who you are, self-contained. Ohr allows there to be a connection. You see me, I see you. I see reality, I see a world, I see objects around me. That's the concept of Ohr. Ohr Ein Sof, therefore, what does it mean? It means the way the Ein Sof, the way Hashem, Kivayachal, could be perceived, could be experienced in reality. That's the concept of Ohr. If there was no concept of Ohr, so the core would be the core, but it would be untouchable. I would have no entrance into your life. Ohr is the fact that there's a system of PR, there's a system of tiksharet, of communication. Ohr is the ultimate communication, the first and ultimate communication. Because things emit light, so therefore that light can reach my eyes, and the retina of my eyes has sensors that picks up the light, my brain interprets it, and then I say, this is what I'm seeing. There's certain things I can't see. Not because it doesn't have light, because it's levels of light that I'm not a keli for. My senses don't pick them up. My brain doesn't pick it up. So there's certain colors we don't see. Birds could see certain colors we don't see. There's sounds we don't hear. There's certain, because in order for me to be able to see it, I have to have kelim for it. But the nekuda of oir is the way something is expressed, manifested, communicated. That's oir. So the Zohar says a statement that the oir of Ein Sof, which is Hashem, is l'mayla adin ketz. It goes endlessly upwards and it goes endlessly downwards. The focus of this chapter is, what does it mean lamata adin tachlis? What does it mean by lamata adin tachlis? So on one level, in the previous chapter, he explained lamata adin tachlis is that since the oir is from Hashem, the oir is infinite. Because the oir reflects its source, oir me'ein hamayir. So the source is infinite, the light is infinite. And creation happens through this light. This was the main idea. And because of that, there's an infinite worlds that are created from that Ur, Lamata Adin Tachlis. That's called Inyan Isavos, expressing the fact that you're dealing with an infinite, the light is infinite. But now he continues, and that was at length the Teichen of last year's. We learned Basi, Legani, Chav Beis. It's online if anybody wants to review it. It's an incredible deep Maamar. The whole system of creation through Ur, what Ur is and how Ur creates, etc. But now he takes it a step further. And he says, Ubesi'if Yud Gimel, which is Echad. Yud Gimel is the numerology of Echad, 1, and that's not stam a statement, because we'll see this is going to be the point. Sif Yud Gimel, which is Echad, Mamshech Levar Inyan Noisef B'Lamata Adin Tachlis, Loidak B'Negel Inyan Ishavos, Ela B'Negel Ispashtus V'Gilu Yodin Seif. He explains that Lamata Adin Tachlis doesn't only mean that he creates in an infinite way, but it's also talking about the Hispashtus and the Gili of the Yodin Seif. That the expression and the revelation of the infinite light goes down below to no end. What does it mean it goes down below to no end? This is the key. There's no place in the world where you can't find the Ein Sof. We can't take those words lightly because it's counterintuitive. You can go down lower, but there's an end, right? It says Adin Tachlis. Just like when you go up. Yesterday in Torah Parshas Va'eda we learned, Alter Rebbe says, L'mayla Adin Ketz means, as high as you go up, you can go further up. Which means, any definition that you'll ever give for God, there's always another more. Don't get stuck. People like at some point to feel comfortable in reality. I could control my life. I understand life. He says, there's higher. The word Eibishter in Yiddish, how do you call Hashem? Eibishter. What does Eibishter mean? Higher. Higher than what? Whatever. Wherever it is. Eibishter. There's something higher. The Baal Shem Tov said, for every question I have an answer. But for every answer, I have a question. I have an answer for that question too, but for that answer, I have a question. Because what's a question? A question is really going up to a higher world. Sometimes you read something, it makes sense, right? You learn a Gemara fast, it makes sense. Then you learn it a little better, and you see it doesn't make sense. Why? Because you learned it better. The first time you didn't understand, so it made sense. You learned it a little better, it doesn't make sense. Then you learn it a third time, you learned it, now it does make sense. Then you learn it a fourth time, it stops making sense. That's what the Baal Shem Tov was saying. A kasha means you're going higher. a real kasha, you're going higher. So I have a question, then I have an answer. But then I have another question. So the Maila Adin Ketz means you go higher and higher and higher. In other words, whenever a person feels, I got it, I understand it, I have my life figured out, my life is under control, that's a prison, that's a trap. It's l'mayla den ketz. There's no kate, there's no limit to how high reality is, how deep it is. On one hand, it's very humbling, because I can't master it, but that's exactly the point. Of course you can't master it. As long as there's an I, you can't master it. You always have to shed more layers, more layers, more layers. And fortunate is the person who's open to that. Right? Today's redemption becomes tomorrow's exile. Tomorrow's redemption becomes the next day's exile. That's l'mayla den ketz. So you can always go deeper and higher. Don't put a lid on growth. Don't stifle growth. Don't put a lid on God. Eibishter doesn't say anything. It just says, higher. Higher. There's more. There's more. I told you the Maisa with the Batche, no? I told you the Maisa, yeah? There was a chassid of the Balatanya. He was a Batchen. The problem was that at that wedding, the Alter Rebbe was there, so he couldn't. He didn't feel comfortable, so he said some l'chaim. He loosened up, and he starts talking to the Alter Rebbe, and he said, "I decided that there's no big difference between you and me. Why? What I know, you also know. What you don't know, I also don't know. So what's the difference? There's some things that you know and I don't know." But then he said, but how does what you know compare to what you don't know? They said Alter Rebbe started to cry. So that's l'mayla den ketz. L'mayla den ketz means never define reality. Never. The worst thing, the saddest thing a person could say is, I know everything there is to know about myself. I know everything there is to know about my spouse. I know everything there is to know about my children. The worst thing you can hear from a therapist or from a neuroscientist is, I know everything there is to know about the brain. Really. A doctor, I know everything there is to know about medicine. Really. A rabbi, I know everything there is to know about truth. Really? Then it's not true. That's l'mayla den ketz. What's l'mata den tachlis? The opposite. So there's no definition. I got that. Every definition is only a very limited version. It's important, but there's higher, deeper. L'mata den tachlis is the exact opposite. There's no place that's too low. In other words, there's no definition that is not true. There's no definition that doesn't capture. Like Rabbi YY Jacobson is niggin. Rabbi YY Jacobson has a dudala, yeah? It says, Aye emtsa'aka ribono shel olam, va'aye loy emtsa'aka ribono shel olam, avu v'alech de gefinnen, ribono shel olam, unavu v'alech de nisht gefinnen, ribono shel olam. Where will I find you? Where can I find you? And then he says, but where won't I find you? Where can I find you? I say, here, I found you, this is it. But where can I not find you? L'mata den tachlis means there's no place that's too low that you can't find him. The Ein Sof extends infinitely up, but also infinitely down. So every definition, every experience of life is also Ein Sof. It's not limited by that, but it's not excluded from that either. Every drop of water and every flake of snow and every drop of rain and every grain of sand and every cell and every atom and every heartbeat and every pulse and every star and every bush and shrub and stone and insect and reptile and fish and bird and mammal and even you and I, it's also an embodiment of Ein Sof. There's no definition that's excluded. Right, the Kotzker Rebbe once asked his students, right, who is God? Where is God? And the answer he wanted to hear was, wherever you let him in. So that's in terms of what I experience. But here we're saying, there's no mata. You say, but I'm too low. This is too low. He says, no. The Ein Sof goes endlessly below, just like it goes endlessly above. But what's pshat? It goes endlessly below. So you could think he creates things that are very mundane and physical. That's true. But he says here the word is hispashtus v'gilui Ein Sof. The divine infinity goes down lamata den tachlis. Not that he creates things. The Ein Sof is lamata den tachlis. Which means, now this needs a lot of explanation, but I'm just saying what it means. It means as follows. Whatever you're looking at in the world, even that which you're calling the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, you could say it another few times, but I don't want to keep you here forever, so I won't say it more. But the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, what you're really seeing is, what are you seeing? Ein Sof. And that's the source of all healing. And that's the source of the whole tikkun. And that's why the last lines of the Maamar is going to say, that's why lo yidach memenu nidach. They put it here in parentheses. They didn't get it, that was the whole nekuda. Whoever edited it, you put it in parentheses. It's really the whole point. What's pshat lo yidach memenu nidach? Nothing is going to get lost. Why is nothing going to get lost? Nothing is going to get lost because it can't get lost, because it's not lost. Because it's Ein Sof. It just doesn't know who it is. It's a distortion of who you are. That's the chiddush. Ein Sof lamata den tachlis means the lowest place you'll go, if you know how to look at it, what you're seeing is Ein Sof. So it's not like you're sick, but we're going to heal you. No. What you defined as your lowest of the low is essentially Ein Sof. You have to have the right glasses. That's the nekuda. You have to have the right perspective. And therefore nothing and nobody is going to get lost, because you're not lost. You're connected right now. That's what I'm explaining. We're not talking about hishavus, we're talking about hispashtus and gilui. Hishavus means that something that's infinite can create whatever it wants, but what it creates is something else. Hispashtus v'gilui means that the Ein Sof is extending and expressing itself lamata den tachlis. In other words, what is the mata den tachlis? It's a gilui of Ein Sof. You'll say, what do you mean? So it's not mata den tachlis. So call it infinity. That's the chiddush of the Zohar. That this Ein Sof, this communication of Ein Sof, Eid is communication, Eid is revelation. Remember, that's what light is. It's not just l'mayla den ketz, lamata, in the lowest lamata, it is Ein Sof. So you say, so why are you calling it mata? So it's a very high thing. It's not. That's why it's called lamata. It's actually something that's completely detached, apparently. And that's what it means. You remember that the king puts himself in danger. The king puts himself in danger. What does it mean he puts himself in danger? You go into a place where you may die. You understand? You go into a place where you may get cut off. You may be destroyed. The Ein Sof goes into a place that's not comfortable. It goes into a place where it may die. What does it mean it may die? What does it mean it may die? Huh? Cut off! Cut off! I don't want to say those words, but it's like Hashem is putting himself in a position where he's not going to come back. What does that mean? What, they're stronger than him. If he what does it mean? It means you're putting yourself in a place where you could be completely cut off, which is a form of death. Let me finish that. Another, Hashem is going into a place where there's complete disconnection and disassociation from self, which is the most dangerous place to be. But who's going in there? Ein Sof. Why? It's the only way you could win the war. The only way you could win the war. When you say Hashem does it, it means we're all doing it. It means that's the system of reality. So the Ein Sof goes into a place of Lamata de Tachlis. It's taka called Mata. Huh? Therefore, lo yidach mimenu nidach. Therefore, lo yidach mimenu nidach. Why lo yidach mimenu nidach? Because it's Ein Sof.
Why don't you say ignored instead of...
Ignored, yeah.
Cut off is from our perspective.
Yes, yes.
We're cut off and therefore...
You're a good student of your wife.
Yeah, but that's for sure. But if you want to say that something, the king can be destroyed...
Yes. Of course, from our perspective.
No, but the Maamar uses that as a metaphor.
Yeah.
And therefore, it seems to be a false premise, right?
Right.
That could never happen.
Right, of course.
I'm supposed to learn from a false premise that I should not ignore something. Why shouldn't I just be told, open your eyes up?
Right, just to bring out the intensity of it, how serious it is. Let's talk in a person's life, okay? There's a process known as dissociation, where you become disconnected from yourself. It's a very, very serious condition because there's no I anymore. You know, as long as there's an I, right, I can feel pain, I can feel sadness, I can feel difficult emotions, and I have to deal with it. But then the pain is so deep that the I says bye-bye. I mean, we've spoken many times about this. I'm not going to get into this, but there's people, children, who went through experiences that their souls had to leave their bodies. There's people here in this room who unfortunately know this too well from themselves. What does it mean their souls? It's not a mystical thing I'm saying. These are real facts. The soul leaves the body. What does it mean? It means if my body as a child experienced things that were despicable, to be present would be too painful. So what happens? You know what happens? The I disassociates. In Lashon Chassidus, the I goes into Golus, gets covered over by klippas, by 1,000 shells. You don't have access to the I. And now my body, do whatever you want with it. It's like a shell. Here, you want to hit the table, hit my body. What happens when this person grows up? There's no I. There's a complete disconnect. I don't even know who I am. I don't know what I believe in. I don't know what I'm feeling. Nobody should know about this, but this is a real condition. This is called the Mata Adin Tachlis. This is going to be the Nakud of this Maamar. This is going to be the Nakud of this Maamar. You have the way the Ein Sof is I. That's the core of all I. You have the way the Ein Sof comes down into levels that are connected. And then there is the Ein Sof going into the war zone where the king is in danger. What does it mean it's in danger? Where Kivayachol, you're not coming back. You're like cut off from your source. But he doesn't leave. I'm there too. In that place, the Ein Sof is not just there. What does it mean it's there? That is really the reality, even of the lowest place. It's really Ein Sof. It's not seen that way. That's the most vulnerable thing in the world Hashem can do. That I'm ready to go into a place where it seems like I'm completely disassociated from myself. How radical is that? Where am I ready to go? I'm ready to go. I'll talk to you, I'll connect to you, but I want to be connected to me, right? When a lifeguard goes into the ocean to save somebody, the lifeguard goes in only if he could bring the person out of the water, not if he's going to drown. Chas v'shalom. Nobody jumped out of the lifeboats by the Titanic to go save people because they would go with them. You have to have a means to save somebody. So I'll reach out to you, but I'll reach out to you when they save people who are stuck, Rahman al-Islam, in caves, miners and this, right? You have to make sure that you have the mechanism to pull them out. You have the rope. You're not going to detach yourself from the rope and go down. You're not coming back. What are you gaining? So I'll go, but I'm not going to disassociate from me. I want to pull you up. But by a Milchama, the Melech goes further. He's going to go fully there. Now he knows he's not going to die. Rabbi Yaakov, you're right. He knows. But what does that mean? That means you're never going to be detached. Because wherever you are, it's Ein Sof. So Mela Yidach Mimeno Nidach. So you'll never be able to get lost. And for that, the Ein Sof has to go into a place that's l'chayre, the opposite of everything it is. And that's a very serious thing. That's very serious. It's extremely vulnerable. It's almost frightening. But it's the key for the real transformation. That's why Yud Gimel is Begematria Echad. Because that's where the real oneness happens. The real oneness is that Lamata Adin Tachlis is also not separate. Oneness doesn't mean that in a beautiful place we're one. It means that in the lowest place there's still Echad. The Olam is typhus a little what I'm saying, or it sounds too... Huh? Is that typhus? You understand what I'm saying? It's all going to be the Isis of Chassidus, but I'm giving it to you... I'm giving it to you the Nekuda.
Even when it's perverted, so to say.
Yes.
It's a case where you look at it and you say that's the exact opposite.
Exactly.
Even where they change it into a different religion is what you're saying.
The pervertedness, yes, it was perverted. It was detached, perverted. Perverted is
Twisted it.
Lamata Adin Tachlis. Perverted is ze me'ukam, ze me'uvat, ze legamni me'uvat, distorted. How do you say distorted? Misulaf, mezuyaf mitoichoi. It's mezuyaf. Huh? Yeah. It's mezuyaf. Good question. You see people get lost and not coming back. You see people that the pain of life is too deep and they're... Yeah. And there's a nekuda in them that's going to come back. It may not express itself always in our lifetime that we see physically. But La Yidach Mimeno Nidach says on every nitzutz in the world. There's not a nitzutz that's going to be lost, ever. Sof kol sof. Even the Arizal says, and you have in the whole Sugin Sanhedrin, Perek Chelek, Elu, that this one doesn't have a Chelek in Olam Haba, and this one doesn't have a Chelek in Gemara Rosh Hashanah. There's a whole Sugin, Daf Yud Zayin Yud Ches, right? Gehenim Kala, Veheimenim Kalin, right? There's a Sugi over there that a certain Rishayim, yeah? The Gehenim is going to finish. They're not going to finish. In other words, they're going to outlive the Gehenim. Like you say, the fire is going to go out. You'll still be there. So the Arizal says, but think about what it says. The Gehenna will finish, but they're not going to finish. They'll still be there. It sounds like a curse, you understand? Even when the fire is finished, you're not finished yet. But that means what? You go beyond the fire. So the Nekud of La Yidach Mimeno Nidach means that in the real tikkun, there's no bad parts. And this is the Teres Hagula. Teres Hagolos, there's Toiv and Ra. And it's true. There's good and evil. There's good and evil. It's real evil. We call it Yetzer Hara. You want to do bad things. And it's important to say that because Eidin suffers Lamata Adin Tachlis, but you're a lowlife. Lamata means you're a lowlife. But I just said the wrong words, because that's from a certain perspective, and it's important to know this is good, this is bad, and right now I want to do something dysfunctional and destructive to me and to others. But where does real healing come from? Where does the transformation of the world come from? It says, "V'sruach hatumah avim minaz." When Mashiach comes, there won't be tumah. What's pshat? It's a miracle. One day Hashem is going to say, that's it, tumah, done. No. Yeah, it's a pretty big miracle, but it's deeper than a miracle. A miracle means abracadabra kadu. What he's saying here is no, it's the emes. When the real emes gets revealed, you see that what you call the Yetzer Hara was really Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis.
Is that why he calls it Achos Kala?
Yeah. What does it mean Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis? It went into a low place. It's low. Like you said, it's perverted. It's distorted. And you have to know that. It's Lamata Adin Tachlis. What is it? B'pnimiyus. It's the Gilui of Ein Sof. And the word is Gilui. Gilui means revelation, but it's not revealed, it's concealed. Huh? But if you understand what it really is, it's the Ispashtus of Ein Sof. It's the way the Ein Sof was detached from itself in the perception of the Lamata de Tachlis, and God says, I'm not running away, I'm still here. You know how painful that is? That means that when that happens to me or you, the Ein Sof was always there. So that means you were never detached. So what you're calling disassociation was not disassociation. From my perception, it was disassociation. Even the disassociation is an embodiment of the Ein Sof.
That's why it's so powerful.
That's true. That's true.
Can you say the neshama is part of that life?
The reason the disassociation is so powerful, people always wonder, why is darkness so powerful? Why when I'm having a good day, I'm having a good day? When I'm having a bad day, I'm not just having a bad day. It's like eternal. When you're having a good day, okay, say it, Baruch Hashem. When you're having a bad day, it's like, my life forever is cursed. This is never ending. Everything is over. Why? Why can't you just say it? So the cynics say, because it's real. The optimism is fake. The pessimism is real. Chassidus says, you remember I said this a few weeks ago. Chassidus says, what's the real reason? The real reason is because Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis. So what you're feeling is the Ein Sof. When you're saying darkness is infinite, what you're really saying is Ein Sof is infinite. And that's what I'm holding on to. Because the Ein Sof is in the darkness. And fakert, there's something about Atzmus and Ein Sof dafke there. Yisinor min hachoshech. So therefore, it feels more infinite than anything else. What you're really touching is the infinity of the divine that's inside of it. So the disconnection is so painful and so real and so infinite. You know why? Because the Ein Sof is Lamata Adin Tachlis. Good question. You're saying the Ein Sof is also in the good day.
On a real good day, you talk about it. You're calling it a good day.
The answer to that is that in Gilui is much more limited than Helam. Gilui, when something is reflected, so it's always with a certain measurement of how much could be reflected. Yeah. In concealment, in Helam, you have everything. You have the Atzmius is there, because it doesn't have to be expressed. So everything is there. Verstehst du, was ich sag? Was hast du gewollt fragen? Good question. How could you say these words about Ein Sof, that it's not in its place? Because that's the word of the Zohar. Ein Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis means what makes it mata. Avada, it's not really not in its place, because that becomes its place. But what it means it's not in its place is that when you look at it externally, what you're seeing is disconnect. As he's going to say in the Maamar, this is basically the definition of the world's Bria, Yitzir Asiya. You see disconnect. When you say the king puts himself in danger, what do you mean he puts himself in danger? Yeah. He's really in danger. This is vulnerable stuff. It's not a game. Hashem wasn't playing Monopoly when he created the world. He put everything on the line. People don't realize how vulnerable God is with creation. They think it's a game. Let's play Monopoly. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, okay, a planet, Big Bang, shine. No, let them make themselves crazy now. That's the whole revolution of Matan Torah. What was Matan Torah? Matan Torah was Hashem says, this is a very serious thing for me. I'm in this relationship in Gansen. I'm vulnerable. It's going to be a normal world. And if not, the Teichich, what does the Teichich say? Somebody once said, can God relax a little bit? What's this whole thing? What the Teichich is basically saying is, realize that our relationship is as real as it gets. And if that relationship is destroyed, the whole world gate meshuga. So on one hand you could say, leave me alone, I don't need that. You could say that. You could. It's like a husband who tells a wife, could we make this relationship not so serious? Sunday we'll be together, Monday we won't be married, Tuesday I'll come back, Shabbos we'll be married. But do me a favor, you're all laughing. Why are you laughing? A lot of men do this, right? But the women don't like this. Why? Or the men would like to do it if their wives would give permission. What's missing here? What's missing here is, even when you're in the relationship, you're not in the relationship. A relationship that's for a week or for a month or for a year, even when you do it, it's not that. It's mezuyaf mitoicha. There's a Mishnah in Parah, Naharos HaMachazvin. Rivers that lie. What's that? Rivers that lie. So the Mishnah says, once in 7 years, they dry up. They lie. Naharos HaMachazvin. Kozov comes from the word dry, but also from a lie. Kozov, Shekav v'Chozov. Naharos HaMachazvin, yeah? Why are they lying? Because after 7 years, the wells dry up. So even when they're here, they're not here. If a relationship, imagine you tell your child, I'm going to keep you in the house for a few years. We'll see if I like you. If I like you, I'll keep you further. If not, I'll find you a nice place. I'll adopt you and you'll have a normal life. Yeah? Why? Why not? There's something off, right? What's off? The beauty of a parent and a child is you're mine for now, forever, for eternity. Unconditional. There's a halacha in Rambam, La yisa adam isha v'daite legarsha. Right, a person shouldn't get married with the das of getting divorced. So there's two halachas. Once it's pashtu tefuli, you're not allowed to fool her. But there's another halacha, even if you say. Why? Because it's hepech of a relationship. So my point here is, the relationship is a very vulnerable relationship. Hashem is saying, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving when you're in the circle. I'm not leaving in the pirud, in the biyah, it's in the separateness. Not just I'm not leaving. That is me. The mata den tachlis, b'chipnimius, it's ein soif. That's called putting your life on the line. Because you could be hijacked. You could be kidnapped. You could be abducted, and you know what? That's what happens. The whole koyach hatumah, the whole koyach haklip is this. You took the king into captivity, melech asabaratim. But only that way can you heal the world. You can't heal the world without having empathy. What's the difference in having empathy? Going into the place. You can't sit on the roof and say, "Come here, loser. I'll heal you." You got to go inside. The Maisa with Reb Nachman with the chicken. Next to Basi, under the table. Huh? You remember that story?
Yeah,
The turkey, the chicken. Yeah.
To answer my question, when you say it's Mizuyev and a Siya, that causes a Mizuyev and sort of a say that.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't have a perverted Yitzira.
Right.
Right? But it's somehow there's a
Yeah.
cause and effect to.
Yeah. Yeah. Reb Avram, you're so quiet. You're Lamata den Tachlis or Lamaila den Ketz?
Lamata den Tachlis, for me, was always meant in the place where it's no purpose. Ain't Tachlis.
Oh, Ein Tachlis, no purpose. Very good translation. Very good. Ein Tachlis, the word Tichla means end and it means purpose, and it's the same thing because purpose is the end of something, the goal. So you're saying Lamata Adein Tachlis to the place where there's no purpose. You don't see any purpose. All you see is dysfunction and pain and insanity. Apocalypse. Right?
It's hard to imagine from a Kodesh.
Putin's mind. Putin's mind.
That's easy.
Russians know Russians, yeah?
From a Kodesh Baruch Hu point of view, from Ein Sof point of view, the place where there's no purpose, where the whole world was created. It's totally abstract. It's a paradox
Yeah.
in the language that I
Yes. There's a lot of paradox here. It is paradox. Ein Sof Lamata Adein Tachlis is essentially the source of paradox. He's really in danger. Listen, you're using your intellect too much. Listen to your heart. Experience it emotionally. Only because he's in danger can there be healing. If he's not in danger, he's not with you. You understand? I'll tell you this is true about every healer. If you're not in danger, you will not heal. Fakert. By him it's even more, because he chooses it. By every healer, we still protect ourselves. We go home at night. We're like, I'm out of this office. Baruch Shepatrani. And by Hashem, he doesn't go home at night. He stays. He stays during Krishna Shalamita also.
Could you say Bereshus is in danger?
Huh?
Could you say Bereshus
Yeah.
is in danger?
Yeah.
Hashem himself.
Yeah, you're right. Because of that, lo yidach memenu nidach. You're right. Huh?
Real vulnerability. Why is he really in danger? And it's not just fake. It's because the system he built was to put the control into the
Yeah.
human being. So
Yeah.
he gave away the
Yeah.
So it doesn't have
Huh? When you say a person has choice, it means there's danger. There's a word from the Magid. It says that Hashem does all the mitzvahs, right? All the mitzvahs. The Medrash says, "Mashahu mitzvah lachedim lasasu oisa." Magid dvarov liyakov chukov mishpat tov. He does all the mitzvahs. So the Magid says, I understand how he does the mitzvah of Avos Hashem, v'avos Hashem alakecha. He loves the Jewish people. When you love Jews, you love God. So Hashem loves God by loving us. Fine. I understand the Gemara says Hashem puts on tefillin, but he says, how does Hashem do the mitzvah of yireh, fear? What is he afraid of? I understand, I'm afraid, but how does Hashem fulfill the mitzvah of yireh? So the Magid said, the Magid of Mizrich, Tzemach Tzedek brings it, because the Gemara says, Hakal b'dei shamayim chutz me'yireh shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven besides fear of heaven. So Hashem Kevayachal is afraid what your next move is going to be. That's the Yiras Hashem. He's like, V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav, like it says in Tanya, Maloi chalaretz kvoidei, mabet alavochin klais v'leivim oivdei karoi, in Tanya Perek Mem Aleph. They made now the niggin, yeah, V'hinei Hashem. So what does that mean? He's standing there and he's looking. So what it's like a Google put in a satellite. Essentially, it's like, what's going to be your next move in anticipation? Because of the deep depth of the relationship. So there's an element of Yireh Kevayachal. Okay. So on that is the word from the Baal Shem Tov. You know the word of the Baal Shem Tov? Oh. Baal Shem Tov says, how does it work together? If God knows the future, and He's right? It's not like his system is off, so He knows. So then you don't have choice. Because you already knew yesterday what I'm going to do today. So the Baal Shem Tov says, this is the classic Baal Shem Tov, and I'm not going to explain it, I'm just going to tell you what he says. You'll go to quantum mechanics to maybe explain it or see that you can't explain it. The Baal Shem Tov says like this: you're right, but there's something deeper than God's knowledge, and that's God's love. His love is deeper than His knowledge. And His love, He wants a relationship. And for there to be a relationship, you have to have free choice. So even though mitzad His knowledge, you don't have free choice, but mitzad His love, you have free choice. Because His love trumps His knowledge. Now, I know mathematics. What do you mean? If I know, I know. I got it. Really, what the Baal Shem Tov is saying is there's a frequency where there's no bchira, and there's a deeper frequency where there is. Now you're nodding your head. Suddenly you understood the shir. This yet's garnished yet. Now it's your language, Baruch Hashem, quantum mechanics. Yeah. Yeah, it's a danger of really kidnapping. It's being kidnapped, so to speak. Being manipulated and exploited. Literally, when in disassociation, what happens? Myself is up for grabs. You can grab it, you can grab it, you can grab it. That's what happens. Stockholm syndrome is one way. Even all addiction. If you go to the Nekuda HaPnimis, what is that? It's the most horrible thing in the world. Where does this come in Shirish? Listen to this. Where does disassociation come from? Everything has a Nekuda in Kedusha. It can't be in this world if it doesn't exist higher, in the higher worlds. The answer is Lamata Aden Tachlis. As he's going to say, Bri Yitzir Asiya, which is called Pirud. So you would think Hashem said, okay, Gesundheit, I'll cut off the piece, go fly a kite and do whatever you want. I created you, fine, I'm big enough to create you. No. That part which seems completely detached and disassociated, I never left. Not just I never left, that's also me. I'm there. I'm it. It's not like I cut you off, fine. God says, you know what, I'm fine. I can deal with competition. I'm bigger and stronger. The competition is me too. The pirud, that's the mata den tachlis. That's the einin soif. So what does that mean in a person? In a person, it's the same nekuda. It means that who went into the disassociation? It means there's no disassociation. That's what it means.
Neshama is the light.
The light is there. And it's the infinite light. And that's why the darkness seems so infinite. The darkness seems so infinite. Because what you're touching is something that's really infinite. We're mistaking it for the darkness. Really, it's the pnimius of the darkness.
The black hole, you don't see the light.
The black hole, you don't see light, not because there's no light, because there's too much light. There's too much light. I want to learn another 5 minutes, mamish 5 minutes. I know it's very late, because I just want to finish this point. So mamish 5 minutes, we're going to learn inside, but it should be pretty clear now. We're in the middle of Siv Beis here, the third line in Siv Beis, where he starts explaining Lamata den Tachlis. V'zel Shoyne, he's quoting now the Maamar. Masha Omer Lamata den Tachlis koi ala gilui v'hispashtus b'pchinas ein soy v'ein shiru bli gvul mamish ad lamata mata. We're talking about gilui and hispashtus, revelation and expansiveness, extension, till there's no sheer. In other words, there's no point where it say it's too low. Here I don't go. in states of consciousness that are all the way at the end and all the way on the bottom, in the abyss. In other words, I'm not talking about a flowery place. We're talking about madregas hayoser achrenes ve'eser tachtenes. V'zeh ein sof lamata den tachlis she'ispashtu soyer b'bchinas ein sof bli gvul klal. The oir doesn't know limits. It doesn't only express itself in places that look like light. It expresses itself in places that seem like the opposite. And they are the opposite. I'm saying they are. It's bli gvul klal. Ad madrega yosem mata ad kan l'shayna. This is the language of the Maamar Basi Legani of the Rebbe Rayatz. V'hainu explains the Rebbe she'ein hakavon rak sheyesh ribu yishtalshlos ad ein tachlis v'lechein nikrein soif. He's not saying that Hashem creates worlds and worlds and worlds that don't end. So he's called Ein Sof because from him all this comes. Ela afilu k'fi shenimtza lamata ad ein tachlis sham gufu b'ofen shel Ein Sof. That's the line. It's not that Hashem could create whatever He wants. He creates worlds afterwards. It's much deeper than that. What the Zohar is saying is that the Ein Sof, even the way He comes out in Lamata Ad Ein Tachlis, what are you seeing? You're seeing the Ein Sof. Sham Gufu B'ofen Shel Ein Sof. What do you mean? It's not. You created a strange world. You created an alien world. You hear? That's the chiddush. Is pashtus v'gilui. No, over there it's all saying. What do you mean? Ain't soif over there. He's not ain't soif there. That's the danger. The ain't soif doesn't stop. In other words, it assumes a form of complete separateness. Is I toifus Rabbi? Is I toifus? להמשיך Maamar שהשבח שואם נאמר אין סוף שהחלבי בספשטוס וגילוי אני לא יודע כספשטוס אלא גם גילוי. He says in the Maamar, this great gewaldige that he said about Ein Sof, that it can come out by spashtus. Spashtus means it extends. Gilui is even deeper. It's revealed. What does it mean revealed? What you're seeing as the Mata Ein Tachlis, you're mistranslating it. It's really a revelation of Ein Sof. Ein hakavana lispashtus v'gilui b'olam Ein Sof afilu b'olam atzilus. It's not talking about that the Ein Sof comes out in what's called the infinite worlds, or even Atzilus. The Afal Pisha Berech, Ein Sof Anigam Olam Ein Sof Alachas Kam V'Kam Olam Atzilus Nikroim B'Shem Olamis Mikol Makem Yev Shalom Mashash Shvach Ein Sof Ulamata Den Tachlis Koyal Olam Ein Sof Olam Atzilus. This will be explained more next, but I just want to translate the words. There's something in Kabbalah and Chassidus and Machshava Hashkafa known as Olam Ein Sof, the worlds of infinity. There's something called Olam HaAtzilus, the world of Atzilus. There's something called Olam Bria Yitzir Asiyah. Generally speaking, the light of infinity, first it creates worlds that are infinite. Then there's something called Atzilus. Atzilus is a world of 10 spheres, but it's divine. And then there's Bria, the world of creation, the world of formation, and our world, the world of action. So he says, when you say Lamata Ein Tachlis, don't think it's talking about Olam Ein Sof and Atzilus, which are called worlds. If it's called worlds, it already means it's not the essence itself. It's not the light itself. But that's not what Lamata Ein Tachlis means. The Hine Olam Ein Sof Shalifne Atzimtzum V'Olam Atzilus Hashem made Ein Sof Begilui Hareim Kalim Lo Ein Sof, because the worlds of Ein Sof before Tzimtzum, and even the world of Atzilus, where Ein Sof is revealed, they're kalim for Ein Sof. They're vessels. L'yois degama kalim areim elakus mamish. V'im kein ein peliklal da Ein Sof meir sham begilui. The vessels of Atzilus are elakus. So it's not a pel, it's not a wonder that the Ein Sof shines over there. V'chein ein pelim Hashem yichelim l'kabel Ein Sof hagaloi. And it's not a wonder that they can receive it. V'hainu she'ein ze pel she'Ein Sof yachal yispashet sham. It's not a wonder that the Ein Sof can extend itself in these worlds of infinity and even in Atzilus. It's not even a wonder that it could be revealed, that they can receive it. The Spashtus is not a Pella, and the Gilui is not a Pella. Spashtus means that the light can extend there, and Gilui is that they can experience it, because that's what they are. Mashenkin Bailam is Bri Yitzir Asiyah Kedel Kamon Siv Gimel. The Chiddush of Lamata Ein Tachlis is the world of Bria, the world Yitzir, the world of Asiyah. Here begins what we call Pirud. fragmentation, separateness, disconnection, disassociation. This is the source of reality that's not me. That's where you don't go. You're not supposed to go there. And that's why there could be this reality by a person too. Disconnection. That's the chiddush of Erin Sof Lamata Adin Tachlis. And that's going to be now the whole Hamshich explaining what does this mean. There's the way you define reality as Olam Ein Sof. There's the way you define reality as Atzilus. The way you define reality as Bri Yitzir Asiyah. That's where Lamata Adin Tachlis is a chiddush. That's what he discusses now. The next piece we're going to learn Be'ezer Hashem tomorrow morning at 8. What's Olam Ein Sof? What's that reality? What's Atzilus? And then what's Bri Yitzir Asiyah, which is the chiddush of Lamata Adin Tachlis. In each person's life, you have these three things. You have reality the way it's in the perspective of Olam Ein Sof, the worlds of infinity. Reality from Atzilus' perspective, and reality from Bri Yitzir Asiyah. We'll continue Be'ezer Hashem Bli Neder tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Everybody is invited. Have a beautiful day and a wonderful day. עכשיו אתה רוצה לדעת מה עשיתי אתמול בלילה גם, כן? Oh, what a pleasure to have you. Bruchim habayim.
Hashem, I am able to listen to you all the time.
Gewaldig.
We love you.
Thank you. Thank you.